On Saturday, February 9th, Israel Adesanya will be fighting the co-main event of UFC 234 against Anderson Silva. Though this will be a move back in the rankings after facing off against Derek Brunson in his previous fight, obviously Silva's a much bigger name than Brunson. He's accomplished a lot more in the sport than Brunson, and this is a fight that can really propel him up the rankings and towards the title shot. It's going to be interesting. It's a tough fight to break down just based off of the film that we have on the two guys. Everyone who's fought Adesanya to this point has been trying to take him down. Silva doesn't try to take anyone down. Actually, if you go through the stats here, his takedown ratio, I think they have like a number for how many takedowns he goes for in a fight per 15 minutes, 0.19. And I'm not even sure where those even come from. I don't know if they counted like the missed spinning back fist by Chael Sonnen as one of them. I know he had a takedown against Patrick Cote in their fight, but I think it's pretty fair to say he doesn't really try to bring a whole lot of fights to the mat. Now, as far as how these two match up, obviously Silva's a long-time black belt. Adesanya has been improving very quickly, but it's very unlikely that he's at Silva's level. That being said, I don't know how Silva's wrestling from an offensive standpoint is. I don't know how good it is, how much he's really drilled it. And I don't know that even if he has worked on it, if he's the type of guy who even cares to try to wrestle Adesanya in this fight, or if to him he feels like he's a better striker than Israel Adesanya and wants to actually knock him out on the feet. The obvious thing to look at here is that Anderson's just a lot older now than he had been before. He's in his 40s. One of the things that I've noticed with him as he's aged is that his chin seems to be going quite a bit. Seems to be going. Used to be able to take some serious shots. Probably about like 4 or 5 years ago. You look at the fight with Michael Bisping, he got dropped multiple times. He was getting dropped a lot by Chris Weidman. So it doesn't seem like he can take a shot quite as well as he used to be able to. And that could be an issue against Israel Adesanya, who, though often doesn't have like the most powerful one-shot knockouts, he's definitely good at accumulating. And if he lands a solid knee or a solid kick, that might be enough to put Silva down at this point in his career. One of the other things that happens when you get older, though, is you tend to be a little bit slower in your responses. And that can affect Silva in a couple ways. It can mean he's a little bit slower on his head movement, avoiding strikes, but it could also mean that his timing's a little bit slower if he's trying to land a reactionary strike. But the thing with Silva is that a lot of his game isn't necessarily about having the fastest reaction so much as it is about being able to set you up, so that it's not about after you throw a punch, for example, being able to like slip on the slip right when he sees you throw and then throw a counter. It's more so that he kind of reads you and he knows you're going to throw before you throw, and then he kind of beats you to it. And for a striker like that, even if you are a little bit slower, you can still be pretty effective. Now, granted, in fighting a guy like Adesanya, this isn't going to be an easy fight for him to be able to implement that. I think for the most part, Israel Adesanya is going to be more effective in actually setting traps on Anderson than Anderson will be in setting traps on him. Israel is pretty unpredictable. He tends to change up his game quite a bit, especially fight to fight. He really improves a lot over the course of a fight camp. Or really, for him, it seems like it's more than just fight camps. There are a lot of fighters who, once they get to the UFC, they just train in camps. And the issue with that is that anytime you're in a camp, and I think anyone who's played a sport before, you know that when you're in season for a sport, you're not exactly getting a whole lot better at the sport. It's more just like, hey, this is what you already do. Let's just get better at what we already do, and maybe make some small adjustments here and there. While the off season is more when you actually like learn new skills. In MMA, that's kind of how it works too. Is that in training camps, you're kind of worried about your weight cut. You're worried about kind of adding finer details to the stuff you're already good at, but you're not necessarily learning a whole lot of new stuff. But without a sign, it seems like every time he fights, it's not just that he's getting better at what he already does well, but he's also learning a lot of new stuff. So it'll be interesting to see from November till now how much he's added onto his game and how that's going to affect the fight with Silva. Because a lot of what we've seen have been guys who've tried to take him down, and I don't think Anderson's going to do that. As far as how the betting odds go on this, I think it's right that Israel Adesanya is the favorite, being a minus 625 favorite. That's kind of tough for me because if this is going to be a stand-up fight, it's just plus 465 at Anderson Silva as an underdog. It's a good price. I don't think Anderson Silva is going to win, but at plus 465, it's tempting to take a little bit of action just because I don't think he should be as big of an underdog as he is. So there's some value there, even if more likely than not, I think Israel is going to win. What'll be interesting to me also is that when you're dealing with two really good strikers, in MMA, it's a lot different than if you're just in a kickboxing fight because you can offer the potential of the takedown. And if Anderson actually does go for the takedown, even if he doesn't intend to hold him down for a while, what he can do with that is take Israel off his game a little bit and force him to have to respect the shot, maybe keep his hands down a little bit more than he otherwise would. May also make him feel less inclined to throw extended combinations where he's got his feet set. So you can have some positive effects to that. I think a lot of times MMA fans make the mistake of seeing a fight where a grappler fights a striker, and the grappler either is even in the exchanges or they get the better of them. They just assume that that means that the grappler actually had better striking all along, when in reality, the grappler is oftentimes using the threat of their grappling to make their striking more effective. I think one of the bigger examples would be Khabib versus Conor, where Khabib feints a level change. Conor kind of sets his feet in and drops his hand, preparing to deal the shot, and then Khabib throws the overhand right over the top and drops him. And if you're in a straight boxing match or a straight kickboxing match, Khabib feigning the level change is literally going to do nothing to Conor. Conor's not going to react to it, but because it's an MMA fight, he has to react to it, and in doing so, it creates an opening for the strike. So for Silva, if he does decide to at least make the takedowns part of his game, even if it's just a look for Israel, it could potentially make it a little bit closer than it otherwise would. As far as how they are, just from a technique standpoint, again, Anderson's got so many different ways to win, and it's tough to really say that someone's going to have a massive advantage over him. Israel, who fought in straight kickboxing, got to the highest levels there. He fought for Glory, or in Glory, the organization. So at least from a credential standpoint, you really don't get much better than Israel there, other than the guys who were the champions in Glory. But I don't think Anderson was, at least at his prime, was way behind that level. So if Anderson's able to use the threat of a takedown here, he could make this fight a little bit closer than you would expect it to be. Another thing worth noting with Israel, just from a standpoint of what it looks like the UFC is doing with him, it looks like they're trying to use this fight to build him up into a superstar. And I honestly think that we've been waiting for another big superstar. We had Conor and Ronda for a little while. Then Ronda fell off. Conor seems to be kind of doing his own thing right now. It's tough to get him into the octagon. And when I look at guys who are trying to become UFC superstars, the two big things I look for are people who are going to be able to win for a long time. Because eventually, if you're not towards the top of the division, even if people like you, if you start losing, you start falling down the rankings, eventually people will forget about you. And also people who understand that that sports is entertainment, that sports is a subset of the entertainment industry, and that you have to be entertaining, and especially in MMA where it's an individual sport and you have to be able to sell each individual fight. Someone who's going to seek out the media, seek out the camera, and try to get people a reason to watch is someone who's going to do well, and that's something that Israel does. Does he have the best personality for it? I think he's kind of improving as he goes along. I think there's some work to be done, but you can definitely tell that he understands the value there. Anytime he fights or anytime a fight's coming up, he goes out of his way to get in touch with the media. And the reason why that's important is because if you think about it from a general business standpoint, if you're advertising, I mean, you can think of pretty much any product, but let's just say it's a muscle car. The people you'd want to advertise to most are the people who are most likely to buy muscle cars. The people who are most likely to buy muscle cars are probably, say, reading a muscle car magazine. So getting an ad in a muscle car magazine would be very valuable to you. In MMA, the people who you really want to get your message out to are people who are MMA fans. Where do MMA fans go? They go to the MMA media. So if you as a fighter go out of your way to speak with the MMA media, to get content put together with them in the form of an interview or whatever else it may be, you're getting out in front of the fans that you need to be getting out in front of, and that's something he goes out of his way to do. For example, the Joe Rogan Experience podcast after his most recent fight. So he's definitely doing the right thing on that end. I think, and I mentioned this before, one of my biggest pet peeves in MMA is fighters who get to the UFC and they decide they just want to do fight camps. And they don't really do a whole lot to improve their game. So you'll watch them for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. And the holes that were in their game 6 years ago are still holes 6 years later. The holes that were in their game 8 years ago, 10 years ago, so be it. And the reason why is because they're not training a whole lot to improve their skills outside of fight camps. And when they're in fight camps, they're just cutting weight and they're just working on what they already do. For Adesanya, not only does he work on stuff that he isn't great at, but he's improving it. Not only is he improving at a level of someone who's just a hobbyist, which I feel like is a baseline you should expect from anyone. So, for example, if it takes a normal guy who works as an accountant like 2 years to earn his blue belt, maybe 5 or 6 to earn his purple, you'd expect a pro MMA fighter to at least keep that pace, if not better, because hell, you're a pro fighter, you probably should. He's not just at that pace, he's well ahead of that pace, and that's something that I'm not seeing from a lot of the top MMA fighters, and it's nice to see it from him. So with his game evolving as time goes on, with him understanding the value of using the MMA media, of just using any opportunity he can to get out in front of people, I feel like he's really got great potential to be a future superstar, and I really look forward to this fight. I think there's a lot, as far as predictions go, I think I have to go with Adesanya, but I think a little bit closer than the odds would, than what the odds would suggest. But if Israel gets the win here, he's pretty close to a title shot, and I think he's pretty close to becoming a superstar eventually, and that's that's something the UFC's needed for a while, especially with their two big superstars of late having some issues.